there's still no end in sight to the nightmare facing bus commuters. The nationwide strike continues after unions and employer bodies have been unable to reach an agreement. Workers are demanding a 9.5% wage increase, while employers are offering 7%. eNCA's Slindelo Masikane is following this story. Slindelo, good evening. Thank you for joining me. And today was a day of negotiations, but the frustration of commuters continued. What's the latest from those negotiations facilitated by the CCMA?
Basically, those negotiations have collapsed. The unions representing the striking bus drivers, as well as the employer organizations, could not come to an agreement. And basically, the unions have then vowed to intensify their strike and have vowed to continue with their strike, meaning that bus services continue to be suspended.
What was the point at which there was this collapse that you talk of? What was the stumbling block that they couldn't find common ground on?
Basically, the CCMA commissioner had come with a proposal of a 8 to 8.5% wage increase over 2 years. And of course, we understand the unions had wanted 12% originally. They were willing to come down to about 9.5%, including all their other demands, which were night shift allowances, as well as a revised night shift working schedule, and so forth. However, the employer organizations were saying that they were willing to come to that 8 to 8.5 wage increment over 2 years, but only if the unions then dropped all their other demands, which is then where the rift began and where the rift is. So the two could not come to.
So just how central are these other demands that the unions are making? Give us a sense of the range of things that they are demanding to the point of being so important as to see a process where there was a bit of hope at the start of the day, but it seems all hope is gone now.
Basically, they're saying that the conditions of work for bus drivers are just not within the Labor Relations Act. They're saying that basically when it comes to dual drivers, so when it comes to long distance drivers where you need 2 drivers in that bus, the employers do not want to pay for that second driver unless their foot is basically on the pedal. And they're saying that they are exploiting these workers and they basically getting free labor. They're also saying that when it comes to night shift work or when you have to sleep out, the allowance is just not enough to cover a basic bed and breakfast. And mind you, bus drivers do travel for long distances and they need to be well rested because they hold basically the lives of almost 60 to 80 passengers in their buses in their hands. So they're saying that those kind of conditions of work are just not okay. And it's unfair to expect a driver to leave his family for hours on end and go to another province or a country and just not be paid for the time that he's out.
So many people have so much interest on this particular story, not least the people that commute to work and home on a daily basis, but also business as well, also counting the cost. But we've heard from an organization called the National Black Consumer Council, and they are making quite an interesting proposal in as far as public transport is concerned. What are they proposing? Indeed,
this specific organization has actually written to the CCMA and they're asking for bus services, basically the transport services to be declared essential services, meaning that bus drivers wouldn't actually be able to go on strike. They're saying that people such as nurses and school children are affected by this, and they can't get to where they need to be. Therefore, they are affecting other people's lives. Therefore, they want Section 71 of the Labor Relations Act to be invoked.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, if you think about transport, it really is the arteries that drive the life of the economy in a way. But I imagine that the labor unions would have a thing or two to say about declaring essential services, declaring public transport an essential service. Talk to me about where things stand now. What happens now? What do people need to know going into Monday?
Going into as early as the weekend, if you have a bus tag or you use buses to get wherever you need to go, those buses are still not going to be operational. You must make alternative arrangements. That's the crust of it, because this strike is going to be intensified. Unions have called on other bus drivers who are maybe not unionized to join the strike, because they also stand to benefit from this. They've also called for communities and South Africans at large to just bear with them and to understand that they're fighting for a living wage and they're fighting for basic human rights. So they've also called on communities to support them and support the strike and support the bus drivers.
All right, Slee, we're going to release you in a moment, but let's introduce into the conversation Satawu's national coordinator, and that is Solomon Mahlangu. Thank you so much for coming through for this conversation. So today, it seems we started the day with a bit of hope that we could perhaps have some movement in as far as resolving this bus strike, but it seems you are now calling for an intensification of the strike. What happened at the CCMA?
Look, of course, there was a hope that we have started with, because yesterday when we were closing these negotiations, the employers have requested to go and consult their principals so that they can revise their position. And I must tell you that today we were surprised, because they were so rigid with the very same offer they were coming with. They never even moved an inch. So hence we find ourselves where we are now. So we of course have taken a decision collectively as a trade unions negotiating there. But what I must stress that unions there, they've displayed a very, very united position or standpoint to say we will work together and make sure that we liberate the workers in the industry from the super exploitation. So intensification, what does it mean? It means as from now, we are on the ground reporting to our members and giving them the situation, what is happening there, and making sure that for those other workers who might not be on strike because of their employers being a non-party to the bargaining council, we'll go and mobilize them as well to ensure that they join the strike.
Let's talk about that move. How risky is it? Can those employees who are non-unionized be able to participate in the strike in the way that you envisage, given the difficulties that we imagine that some of them work under in terms of, the factory floor specific issues, because, people work in various situations where the levels of being able to take part in a strike like this vary?
No, I'm referring to the workers in the industry.
Yes.
Remember, this is a past industry.
Yes.
And I think what you need to understand, there are employers, what we call them, parties to the bargaining council. And we have employers who are non-parties. But we have an extension in terms of the agreement. So what I can say, this is a legal strike where they can freely participate. So they've got the choice to do that. So that's why we will go and make them understand the situation as to say there's a need for them to partake in this strike. Yes.
You say, Mr. Mahlangu, that you had spoken to the employers yesterday, and they had said they wanted to consult their principals, and you're saying they came back today quite rigid. What are the specifics where you felt their attitude was rigid? Is it merely on the matter of the salary increases, or is it on the other conditions that you are demanding?
First, let's start at the salary increases themselves. If you can remember very well, as a trade unions, we started from 20%, went down to 15%, 12%, and yesterday we even went down to 10%, and today we revised our demands to 9%, 9.5% for the first year, and the 9% for the second year. That shows to you how committed we were at the process. And there are other sticky issues. I think there are three. One is the issue of a night shift. Remember, in terms of the law, the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, night shift is defined as hours between 6 o'clock in the evening until 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. But in this industry, when you talk about night shift, you're talking about hours between 8 o'clock in the evening until 3 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. So you can see that we are flouting even the very same basic minimum conditions of work. And then the second issue is an issue of a double driver remuneration, where two drivers will be in a bus, and the employer apply what we call a foot on the pedal remuneration. If you are not driving, they say you are off, they are not paying you. So we are saying, can we address that? The employer is even not interested to look into that. And the other third sticky point is an issue of insourcing. So you'll know that the bargaining council has a defined bargaining unit where you will have a list of job categories that the unions are negotiating for. So now you will find that after negotiations, the employer will outsource some of those job categories, like your cleaning and so forth, etc. So now we are saying, can we have those all employees who are falling within the bargaining unit remain with the principal employer so that they can enjoy benefits? Because
given the context that you've just given me, what do you make of a call that says public transport should be made an essential service, this organization writing to the CCMA to consider this? I imagine that you will not quibble with me when I say, you know, public transport is part of the arteries that drive the country's economy. You know, without transport, nothing really moves, quite literally. Would you be interested, or would you be, you know, accommodating of a suggestion that says public transport should be declared an essential service, making it difficult for your members to go on strike?
Yes, I agree with you that public transport is an artery of the economy. But I wonder on which basis, on what basis do those people making that call? But you see, we must look at this thing at a very, very broad dimension, because first we must have to look at their conditions of workers. Given the situation, I don't think as a trade union we will agree with that. In fact, we are vehemently opposed to that, because I think workers in this industry doesn't have rights at all. They don't have housing allowances, they don't have a medical aid, and so many benefits they don't have. So now is a problem. So there's no way as a trade union we will go to an extent or to the level where we agree to this sector to be declared a essential service.
We don't sit, of course, in the negotiations as media, in as much as perhaps we would love to, but I'm imagining the employers on the other side of the table from you presenting an argument that says your demands also have to be realistic in terms of the state of the economy, in terms of the number of people we need to absorb into some kind of employment. There's the national minimum wage that is coming in and that will kick in the near future. Let's not destroy the industry in the interest of getting what you want as a union. Do you have any sympathy to those kind of arguments? Because without a bus industry, none of you have employment, and the employers themselves don't make any profits.
What I must tell you, there are no sound rejection of our demands. Because what I can tell you, since from yesterday, talking to these employers, there is no at any point where they addressed us. So when the CCMA call a plenary, they will come and we will raise our issues, and they ask for a caucus, and then they will send a commissioner to report to us. So we haven't heard them saying any sound reason why are they rejecting our issues. For example, I will cite in the issue of insourcing. I think the public should be aware that what the employer will choose to do, will choose even to go for a more cost method of employing workers. For example, if you employ these workers and on a contract, for example, they bring a contractors to work and employ this so that these employers work for a contractor when they are coming to work for these companies. It's more expensive than these employers directly employing those workers. So we have demonstrated that in many fronts with other employers who have chose to insource those workers. So it's a problem. I think we don't see any reason, a sound reason why are they rejecting our noble request for workers.
Final question then, let's look forward going into the next week. Obviously the talks today have broken down and you've not been able to find each other. How much staying power is there? How much resilience is there among the workers, given that, of course, the principle of no work, no pay applies? And how do you plan to intensify the strike to make it as effective as possible?
I think the first point we must highlight as a trade unions, when these negotiations broke down, we were very explicit to the CCMA to say we are available as a labor, as a trade unions to continue negotiating. Even tomorrow they can call us. If there is a preparedness from the side of the employer to bring any better offer, we are prepared to listen to them and negotiate so that we can call this strike off. Is the first point I think we need to highlight. And the second issue on the tightening, workers are very clear and they are aware. Remember, as a trade unions, what we are doing is not because of the decisions we are taking, sitting from the offices. It's a mandate that we have taken from the workers. We are told by workers to do what we have, take decisions that we have taken today. So workers are well aware of the situation and that no work, no pay principle applies, but they are prepared to tighten their belt and become resilient to make sure that they liberate themselves, because there's no one else who will come and liberate themselves without themselves liberating themselves.
All right, thank you so much for coming through. That is Satawu's national coordinator, Solomon Mahlangu, and of course, Slindelo Masikane, who gave us an update a bit earlier on.